What's up, warriors? Welcome back to the battlefield of the mind. Today, I am with the badass counselor himself, Sven Erlandson. So, hopefully, I didn't kill your last name. I'm rough with him, right?
Trust me, I've been called worse.
Yes. So, Sven, you've been killing it right now, walking in the woods, giving people advice that help them out. Let's start off with you giving some of like the who the heck is this guy again? Because they're probably already following you, but they're like, oh, yeah, I've seen your videos. Now I remember who you're talking about.
hmm
Who is
Yeah,
this?
I've had a counseling practice for the last 30 years, most of the last 10 in Manhattan, New York City. I have clients around the world. I'm former military, though for that was not anything significant, and I did not deploy, so nothing significant there. Um, and former Division I athlete, former NCAA strength coach. And fundamentally, my practice is working with people who are extremely intense or who wouldn't be caught dead in a therapist's office, people who are stuck, people who have tried every other mode of therapy or healing or whatever, and they can't fucking get through it and they need something. Marriages that have been blown up. I specialize also in cheating, and I also specialize in suicide, and also working with veterans and first responders. And I've been doing this shit a long time and written a lot of books and shit like that. But basically in the business is just helping hurting people.
Bro, you're speaking my language. You're on the right show today. All right. I really enjoy this. Can we just start off with the obvious thing, just to start off the get, especially with our guys. I work more with men than anything else at the moment. Our guys are stubborn. We're not going to accept advice or help unless we're in crisis. Generally seems to be like where a guy's like, my rock bottom is hit or my stuff isn't working and I don't know what I'm doing wrong. Like until we get to that moment, like guys usually aren't going to listen or going to reach out. Like, I don't need therapy. I don't need counseling. I don't need a coach. I don't need help. This mentality that's kind of been put on guys that we have to be lone wolves and it's the only way to hunt. What is your advice for like this kind of thinking?
Well, usually the people that I encounter who are coming to me for counseling have sort of brought themselves, life has brought them to their knees. And so by the time they're coming to me, I mean, my business is badass counseling. So they know I'm really here to sort of punch them in the face. I mean, in a loving way. And I'm compassionate in my work, but I'm here to bust through all that shit. But by the time, if they're coming to me, they're coming because they know they fucking need help. To the people who are naysayers or who aren't yet coming to me or say, the guys, and there are plenty of fucking women too, but to the guys who say, I don't fucking need counseling, I say, that's okay. You're young. Give it time. Life will break you. Life breaks everyone. And as I talk about in my last book, there's a hole in my love cup. I talk about how the soul is more powerful than the will. And when we're 20, even when we're 30, maybe even when you're 40, you can willpower your fucking way through life. And you have to understand, my clients are Wall Street. My clients are hedge fund owners. My clients literally, I know it's a fucking cliche, but billionaires, leaders in the entertainment industry, academia, sports, all that shit. And, you get to the top very often by sheer fucking willpower and creativity and grit and all that. But if all that shit comes at a fucking price. It always comes at a price. Everything has a fucking price. And part of the price, well, the ending price by, whether it's 40s or 50s or whatever, if it hasn't chewed up your health or chewed up a few marriages, your fucking kids hate you, or whatever it is, you reach the come to fucking Jesus moment where you've got this gaping hole in your fucking soul and nothing can squelch it. No, the booze doesn't work anymore. Overworking doesn't work anymore. The pills, the fucking all the trips and shit, it doesn't fucking work anymore. And life breaks you down. Your own soul. See, it isn't even really life. It's your own fucking soul grinding you to a halt and saying, this thing, this shell in this life we're living, this is not who we are. It's your own inner authenticity drive. It's your own inner self saying this thing that we've created has been an adaptation to shit that went on a long fucking time ago. And this life, it's not us. Yeah, aspects are fine. Yes, it's nice, blah, blah, blah. But there's no peace in the fucking soul. It's not real happiness and shit. And so the soul will grind the fucking will down. So do the people who say, oh, I don't need therapy. And I say, that's fine. Don't do it. Nothing wrong with that. When you're ready, you're ready. And if you're never ready, you're never ready. But I know for motherfucking fact, life will fucking grind them down and they'll come on their knees and, be begging their fucking priest or their God or their therapist or someone to get them the fuck out of it. And more often than not, what gets them, I mean, if financial ruin doesn't get them, or a lot of men are fine burning through the marriages, until they have to split their fucking fortune yet again. But what really gets them more often than not, if they can survive all of those, is when their own fucking kids don't want them. Particularly for guys, it's when their own fucking daughters don't want anything to do with them. Or when they actually do love a woman, really, really love a woman. Maybe it's the second marriage, maybe it's the third one, and she leaves them. She says, dude, I love you and shit, but fuck this shit. You got to fucking change. This is bullshit. But it's loss. It's invariably loss that brings people to their knees and forces them to realize, shit, I need help.
Man, you hammered so many good things right here. Loss is the teachers, the lessons that we need to wake up, and that humility that comes to reveal the willingness to be able to go, maybe I'm not the center of everything. Maybe I'm not the one who wills everything into existence. Maybe there's more to it than just what I know and what I do. And I want to just give you a little bit more of a praise, because like, there's people who pride themselves in being certain types of warriors. You got your mind side, your body side, your heart side, your spirit side. And you would probably look at you and be more like, this guy's obviously body side, obviously. And you keep going spirit side. You keep talking about souls. You keep talking about there's an energy to us that matters, that will wear down the body, wear down the mind, wear down the heart until it reveals who you really are. Not many people are going to have that awareness until they hit a rock bottom. And I'm like, I'm with you too. It's usually when they come to me is when I'm like, I did everything that I thought I could force into compliance. I did everything I thought I could make it happen. And it's not working. My humility is now happening. And usually when I come in with guys, there's a lot more shame going like, I'm clear, like my daughters don't love me and I'm on a third marriage and everything's falling apart. And I lost my career and I don't have a purpose anymore and my friends won't talk to me. And clearly I'm not doing it right. What the fuck am I missing? Mm-hmm. And like, I'm right there with you where it's like, now you're ready to listen. That's hope. Now there's a chance for you.
Yeah,
and so
there's an old saying, the ego, like the egg, is of no use until it is cracked. That our ego, our life, we're no good until we're broken down, which is really the essence of so much of religion too. That for those who are religious, that prior to you being broken down, fuck do you need God for? You're just going through the fucking motions. It's until we're broken. And for those who aren't, religious, it's still the same thing, that life just fucking breaks you down, breaks your spirit.
Mm-hmm. I think I was listening to, this is a paraphrase of like a quote where a friendship during good times means very little. Mm-hmm. Like until you hit crisis, you know who your people are. Mm-hmm. Until you hit crisis, you hit like, this is all falling apart. You know who's got your back for real. And a lot of times when you think the weight of the world is all for you to carry, you realize that it's actually not yours to carry. And you need some new information, new training, and new perspectives to be able to actually handle what's happening.
Yeah. And yet, Rick, there's so many of these young pukes and in their 30s selling to these young men in their early 20s or teens. They're still selling this bullshit of just fucking willpower and be tough. It's like, oh my God, shut the fuck up.
Hustle mentality, bro. Hustle culture.
Break down the walls.
Yeah. We like, gotta work 26 hours a day and never leave your DMs. You're gonna make it, man. Like, yeah, I've seen the ones too. And like, it's funny because I work with millionaires, billionaires also, and they're like, it's balance, man. If you're not getting a good night's sleep, you're not going to make it. You're going to burn out. And if you're not taking care of yourself and having healthy outlets, you're going to burn out. It's not work 27 hours a day. We don't do that. Mm-hmm. Like, no, you'll never make it. You'll just burn out before that. But I've talked to a lot of these young guys who have fallen into that trap. We're like, dude, man, I gotta work. I'll just outwork them and then I'll be a millionaire by 25. We're like,
Right,
you, dude, I will introduce you to truck drivers and like soldiers and people who like you aren't outworking.
right.
I'll put you on a construction crew. You will not outwork. You think these guys just don't work hard enough? That's why they're not successful? You're out of your fucking mind. No, it's not hard work. You don't know something right now.
Well, and to where you started, sort of, I think before I interrupted you, you were talking about different types of warriors, body and mind and all that. But I mean, if we go back all the way back to the origins, even of yoga, it originally in one of its variations started with the warriors. That it was a way, I mean, in the mythology of thousands of years ago, it was a way to summon the serpent spirit, but fundamentally to fuse body and spirit, to that the warrior mentality, one of, at least in war and battles of different sorts, comes from a place of center. I mean, think about the great writer, okay, Sun Tzu, the great warrior, right? That fucker ain't just talking strategy. He's talking about this notion of weaving in sense of self and this sense of spirit in to be a warrior. And you think about movies like, I know this is cliche, but movies like Gladiator or movies like Braveheart, right? Or even Dances with Wolves. What makes those movies so compelling isn't just that it's fucking more killing, it's that the leader is tapping into something other than just the war. He's tapping into the spirit of self and the spirit of others, and that's what unleashes them in the war, whether it's actual battle or the other wars we fight. And it's just that's a different level of warrior that generally we don't progress into until we move further into manhood, further into adulthood. That it's not just, and it's not just toughness. It's not just battle all the time. It's not just the body. It's not just being, oh, I'm a badass all the time. That to be, here's how I tell it to people, that really what being a badass is, if you're doing the macho tough guy thing all the time, you're fundamentally, you're cutting off so much of what it is just to be human, but you're doing it to this arbitrary standard that says guys got to be tough all the time. Where the fuck does that come from? The truth is, every single one of us has a full breadth of emotions, of feelings. If you're a true badass, in my opinion, you just allow yourself to feel whatever I goddamn well feel in any given moment. Not, I have to be tough all the time. That's so fucking arbitrary. You're on some rock out in the fucking universe somewhere, but it's some universal principle that males are just always tough. I mean, that's just dumb. And so if you're a real badass, it seems to me, it means that if you're playing on the floor, putting together a puzzle with a little kid, you're soft because you feel soft in the moment. If your favorite hunting dog that you've had for 14 years dies, you're going to be fucking sad and you let that shit out. But this notion of to be really a male means I'm only this and not that. It's just like, no, that's to be fucking stupid. That's not male. That's just dumb. And the truth is, as guys progress, I got a couple of special forces guys now that I'm counseling in my counseling practice. And it's just like, who they are in the past, who they were in private was different from who they were in public, or even who they were with their work buddies, with other operators, was different even from who they might be with me in counseling. Because in counseling, and assuming it's with someone they trust, they can express all of this shit. But there are so many fucking expectations. Or maybe they have one really close fellow operator or a retired guy they know that they can let down their guard and let out more than just the toughness thing. So when guys, any type of guy is just, living this whole bravado toughness bullshit, it's like, oh my fucking God, what are you, 14? Jesus Christ. Anyway.
No, preach. We actually did it was last week. I did a 2-hour training on what's a real man. And we got into all of that shit. We got into like, we don't get sad, we don't cry, we take what we want, like this whole bravado thing you're talking about. And then that's why I turned it and I switched it. I'm like, all right, real men, how many of you guys feel real confident about the word vulnerability? About openness, about giving opening your heart up to somebody, being able to connect with somebody's spirit. How many of you guys feel like that's what we're going to judge? That we're going to use judgments and shame to make it so the thing you're actually afraid of is called pussy shit, or that's some weak stuff, or that's weakness. You're like,
Right.
if it's so weak and it's so sissy,
And
why
why
are
can't
you
you?
afraid of doing it?
Right.
Real
Exactly.
men aren't scared of going like, I love you, man. I
Exactly.
appreciate you. I'm proud of you. I believe in you. I'll be there for you no matter how tough it is, man. Like I can open my heart, man. I'll cry about that. I've had guys in my group. They're like, yesterday we had a guy going through it, and he's like, man, I'm crying it out. I'm like, fucking, I'll jump in with you, dude. Let's cry it out. Brian, you in? He's like, yeah, I'll cry with you guys. I don't give a fuck. These are all like hardcore military guys and business owners and like lead. I'm like, dude, fucking real men, dude. We're humans.
Right.
But
Right.
do we have the courage to be able to accept our own authenticity, even if other people won't?
Precisely.
And this is where, like, what's a real man do? I don't have to be afraid of my own feelings.
Yep.
And
That's
that's
right.
where a lot of guys are. I'm scared of my own feelings.
Well, and I mean that's absolutely 100% correct. And to sort of put the fear of God in you, I mean, you can live that way, being scared of your feelings, but I guarantee you, as a matter of absolute fact, and I don't mean you, Rick, but I guarantee you that if you live that way, you are going to fuck up your marriage. And you are going to, in more ways than the normal parent does, you are going to fuck up your kids. Because that if you can't be vulnerable, or if you can't open up and be gentle, be kind, be loving, be sensitive to not only your own shit, but sensitive to someone else, and to be present, I fucking guarantee you'll mess up your marriage. Yeah, I mean, of the women I've had in counseling, session over the last 30 years, so many of them, if they're in relationships with those types of guys, or even if they're in a sort of a lesser version of that type of guy, or somebody less intense, it's always about this desire for connection. And
Mm-hmm.
we all want that in life. But fucking hell, if you can't open up, I talk about in my book, in a couple of my books, I talk about, we're all familiar with brutal honesty. But to me, brutal honesty is kind of the coward's way out, because it's fundamentally you're going through life saying, this is what's wrong with you, this is what's wrong with you. I'm
It's
just being
judgments.
brutally honest. This is what's wrong
It's
with you, and that's what's wrong with
but
you.
they're trying to mask judgments as honesty.
Well, yeah, but worse, they're putting that out there. They're putting the focus on the attention on the other person. What I focus on is not brutal honesty, but what I call radical honesty. And radical honesty isn't when I'm pointing out what's wrong with you. I'm pointing out what's wrong with me. I'm pointing out my vulnerabilities, my fears, the very things that might get me judged, or for which you may not like it, for which you may leave me. Now, radical honesty, that requires some balls, because then that's what vulnerability is. That's what you were referring to earlier. This notion of opening up and showing you who I really am. And if you can't do that, there's no fucking way
There's a
that you
missing
are going
piece,
to
though.
have a great marriage. Your wife will be like, we don't fucking connect. And when a woman doesn't connect with her heart, she's going to close her fucking legs, and then you're checking out. It's done. Go ahead.
Sure. There's a piece that I found missing because when I was doing a training on radical honesty, I'm like, how is it so difficult to work through? My next book goes more into like the piece that you need to do radical honesty is radical acceptance. I need to be able to hear what you're saying as it is without having all of my wounds, my triggers, my defenses, my control mechanisms kicking on to make it more or different than what it is. And so I have to accept where you're coming from. That way I can take your honesty on without blame, shame, judgment, or guilt. And so let's start off with radical honesty. And in that way, I just more go into training grieving systems. So that way I can go through denial, bargaining, anger, depression into acceptance, honor, meaning, and accept truth from your point of view without judgment of your point of view. So while radical truth or radical honesty would be like a goal, well, without radical acceptance, it's only going to turn into conflict.
Well, and the truth is, you're not going to be radically honest anyway, unless to some degree you have accepted it, or you're okay, or at least you're taking baby steps. But yeah, there's some truth to that too. That yeah, you got to purge out your own fucking pain, fears, and bullshit beliefs you've been taught about yourself from your past,
Yeah.
so that you're not triggered by the other person's radical honesty. And unfortunately, so many guys in the past, for sure, haven't done that shit. And that's why, we're seeing so many guys, and not saying women don't do their share to fuck up relationships, but that's why we're seeing so many guys just fucking shutting down and fucking ruining that shit.
Well, they're also more guys are also because of the way the dynamic is shifting. And I don't go hard into polarization, but I can't deny it exists
Right.
for especially masculine, feminine energy. I can't pretend it's not a thing.
Right.
I just don't.
That's not me
That's
either.
not where I go with it. But I can say
Right.
like I can see where if she's being far more aggressive and he's being way more passive, I'm like, well, there's going to be a dynamic shift here. You can
Mhm.
see like if she's taking over all the masculine stuff and he's doing the feminine stuff, you're going to see a dissonance happen. There's going to be hypergamy that does kick in, that does exist. And so those things are there, but being able to say I can accept radical truth. Truth is such a funny word, man, because I actually I'm writing on this now in this new book. I've been just studying the shit out of it. Truth is so hard for people. Like the whole like the Jack Nicholson thing, like you can't handle the truth, like that thing. Like when you tell somebody like the truth, how often is it able to be like reflected back that they truly really hear you without adding to it or changing it or altering your intention or creating an assumption, and then points of view become very different, and you've heard this thing I'm sure 100 times, like when I do like the thing like what number is this to you, and you're like, well, that's a 6 to me. I'm like, it's a 9 to me, like what is this? I'm like, what letter is this? You're like, oh well, that's a B. I'm like, to me it's not. If is it a music note or what is this? Like we can say this one thing is all these things. And like, well, who's right?
Mhm.
Like everybody's right. It just depends on what you see it as first. Everyone's right, but then also everyone's wrong because it's not the same as what the other person saw. So then truth becomes a sales pitch.
Mhm.
Truth becomes my point of view, my perspective, my experiences, my wounds, my fears, my doubts
Mhm.
becomes truth. And now it turns into who's going to sell harder. And then you throw in control mechanisms or coping mechanisms, fight, flight, freeze, fawn. You're going to have somebody who gets way more aggressive, somebody who surrenders, somebody who's going to be hard negotiator, somebody who's going to be like, all right, I'm freezing and I'm not even interested or listening anymore. And then you've got another person who's going to be run away or suppress themselves or hiding, or you're going to go into a defense mechanism until someone goes, okay, fine, your way, fine. Whoever's the most aggressive, fine, whatever. Like turns into what's truth then? Just who sells it the most?
Mhm.
Radical truth and radical honesty really requires radical acceptance, or else we can't have a real conversation about it.
Or at least radical openness,
Yeah.
right. And that's why it's done again. That's why it's done in baby steps. That I share something with you, it's one for one correlation, and I share a little bit and watch how you respond. Are you accepting, and or do you ask another question, and so forth. Then I feel comfortable opening up a little bit more. And I mean, ultimately, so much of what we all seek, regardless of gender, is we all seek to be seen for who we really are, and to have the other person stay and not turn their back. There's always the risk that they will, and that's part of life, and we lick our wounds and move forward. But the desire to be seen and loved for who we are. But that, of course, the price of that is having the courage to show who I really am. And that's the harder part.
I couldn't agree more. The first 5 weeks of my program is just know thyself. We have to tear you open and go, what stuff is really yours? And then what belief systems and what things were put in here that these aren't yours. Those were put there from dad or mom or your ex or like your best friend betraying you or people who like bullied you or so. Those were put there from other people. That's not actually you, or you've altered yourself, or you change yourself, or you wear a mask every day to try to give a persona or an image or this is who I really am.
Mhm.
When I break them down, like, what are your real things here? Because if you want to be really, really loved and connected and be able to do where I do later want to kind of reference this yin yang thing that I found for like mind and body and then heart and spirit. It's like different rules, especially for the word surrender, like very different rules for these sides. But if I'm going to show authenticity, can I get some like, I know the warrior way to it. I want the badass counseling way that you go, like, we have to figure out who you are so you
Mhm.
can be accepted for who you are, but not by others first, but by you having the courage to be you first. How
Mhm.
do you approach this thing to give people like, a fighting chance?
Yeah, it's probably not. I don't know, not much different. Different language, maybe different approaches from what you're saying, but I require all my clients that come to me that they have to write an autobiography before we ever meet. They have to have it to me at least a week in advance, maximum 10 pages. And then I read that. I don't charge for that. Usually I'll study it it takes me a couple hours to study it. And so I know their life story from their perspective. Maybe they're lying, maybe they're telling the truth. Most people tell the truth. And if they are lying on something, I can usually suss it out, because usually a lie won't make sense given the context of everything else they've told me, or they're giving, clues, whatever. Point is, I'm going back into the past to find out where the major wounds are. Because if somebody's coming to me, they've got massive fucking pain, and I'm in the, job of not alleviating pain. I'm in the job of healing it. And so it requires going back into that and identifying what was done to them, the massive emotions that were surrounding those memories and those traumatic, painful events, but then also what that taught them about themselves. I talk about in my book, the 3 binary gates, and that each kid is fundamentally getting 3 messages, and there's either a positive or a negative to either one, to keep it really simple. Basically, it's I'm wanted, I'm not wanted, which then derives down into I'm wantable, I'm not wantable. So it's a self-identity. Second is I'm good or I'm bad, or I'm great or I'm never good enough, something along those lines. And then the most powerful message that any child gets, most powerful, even whether or not, even greater than I'm good or I'm bad or I'm wantable or I'm unwantable, those are value assessments. The biggest one is that who I am matters or doesn't matter, because now it's not about value. That's an existential question, that the real me doesn't even exist. So very often there'll be parents who are using the child to meet their needs. And so the underlying message being conveyed to the child is who you really are doesn't matter. Or the classic golden child. Let's take that one. Plenty of guys are golden child, right? Whether it's through athletics or music or arts or whatever it might be. Or I was just always mommy's good little boy, or whatever it was. The golden child, the sibling of the golden child, thinks that the golden child lives the posh life because they're getting all the fucking attention. And when you're the sibling, you're on the you're on the hind tit. And but the golden child is still getting the message that who I am really doesn't matter, because I am expected to be someone. I get the Scooby snacks, I get the spiffs, I get the fucking little fucking rewards and attaboys when I am being who you want me to be, when I am being who the external primary power source wants me to be. And so in all those messages, what the message being conveyed to the child is who you really are doesn't matter. And so what it requires, and that nothing will inhibit your being authentic, then that core message that you got at 2 or 4 or 8 that got pressed into the wet cement of your soul and hardened and became sort of the virus infecting the operating system. If that message is you're not wanted or not wantable, you're not good enough, but especially if it's who you really are doesn't matter, there's no fucking way on God's green fucking earth that 25 years or 45 years later, you're going to be living authentically. Not if deep down you believe that your authentic self isn't wanted, is no good, or that it's simply maybe you're cognizant of aspects of you that are more authentic, or you're cognizant of what doesn't feel right. That's the beginning of authenticity. You may have even cognizance, but it doesn't feel safe, because when you were back there as a child, it wasn't safe to express your real self, because dad was a fucking tyrant, or it was all about mom's drinking and her fucking depression, or we were always walking on eggshells because grandma, raised us and she was just a volatile character. And so the child sticks their real self down deep inside. And so it requires going back into those stories and uprooting what the hell really happened and what it really feels. And I tell you, there is nothing that will scare the living fuck out of people more than going into that shit. There's nothing that will scare them more than having to see their past from somebody else's eyes. I mean, I'll regularly tell a client, you gave me this autobiography. All right, this is your story from your perspective, and I'm reading it, and I'm sorry, your mother's a fucking cunt. I fucking hate your old man, or whatever it is. And I have to be very honest with you. I believe that if I pulled 100 random people off the street and read them the autobiography or showed them, gave them the notes, and Steven Spielberg made a movie out of it, and we looked at the movie of your life, they'd fucking hate you. And I'm finding myself wondering, how come you don't? And so it's confronting them with shit like that and really pushing hard. And then if they choose to not hate their parent, fine. But so often, whether it's the hate or the resentment or the bitterness or the disgust, it's allowing that to come up and out. But a lot of people don't want to touch it because, hey, it's my parents, or they don't want to deal with the ramifications. So they'll say, I'm not a hater. I say, you already are a hater. The hater's in you. You just don't want to get it out of you. Furthermore, you think hate lasts forever. And I've had plenty of clients who say, I hated my, mom for, 2 years, and I worked on flushing it all out. Now the hate is gone. They think it's a permanent state or whatever it is. But that's the shit people are really afraid of. That's the shit that, in the end, more often than not, created the fucking success that came in their 20s, 30s, and 40s, because they're running from all that shit, or they're trying to prove themselves, or they're trying to prove, no, I do matter, even though they're being inauthentic. They're trying to get some love poured into their fucking love cup. So ultimately, to answer your question, to get people to become authentic demands finding where the original command to be inauthentic came from, to find where those original beliefs were poured into them and pressed into them. And that's the scary shit of life. And again, if for no other reason than because of the implications. Well, fuck, this means, Jesus, I always thought of my parents as good parents. I thought I had a good child, and this means I really fucking didn't. No, you didn't. No, there's no definition of good parenting that fucking fits under, and that's some powerful shit. And what makes it really, really fucking hard is when you've actually begun to maybe have a good relationship with your living, breathing parent, or they've atoned for what they did or whatever. But that parent of your childhood and the crimes committed and the pain from that is still fucking in you. So it's like, well, it's push pull. What do I do here? And that's hard when you want a relationship where your parent is aging and you say, well, I'll never confront my parent over that. I'm saying I can heal you without you ever confronting a parent. That's not the point, but they feel guilty or whatever, that they really are confronted with two moms or two dads, the one of my present and the one of my past. And from that great quote, no man is truly free until he can live as though his father is dead, or his mother, but the one from your past. It means to slay that and the message and identify those messages. And by identifying them and putting them into words and journaling and writing letters that we don't send, we flush it out, and that gives room. And then your authentic self just effortlessly bubbles up from inside.
Let me just first off say thank you for taking the brakes off, because a lot of times people will get on stuff and be like, let me give like the censored version. I'm following everything you got. And I like when I can hang out with guys that I can just go, all right, good. We don't have to do training wheels. Let's go. So thank you. I like it. I want to also go through this over and over again. The gates, the golden child, the doubt, the safe not being myself. I'm going to share some of the tools that I use for this and walk through the same thing that you just did. And a lot of times other people who do this love this shit. So it's pretty fun. I'm going to show you, this is a map that I use whenever I'm working with people. This is a map that came to me. Listen, I think God threw this at me because it came at 3 a.m. And I've run this by PhD psychologists, authors, and this is how I have people running through their systems. The core piece is obviously going to be this thing. And this is where you talked about the wanted, not wanted. This is if I am chosen, good or bad. Am I worthy? The belief system of who I am matters. This is purpose. And it starts getting into the belief systems that create your identity. Now, most people want to try and jump right into identity and get into your beliefs or your habits or your personality type or your purpose or your status. And they want to start getting into who they are. And they don't necessarily get to the point where, why is your belief system what it is? A lot of times you're stuck in your loss system. And this is the part where you've gone through trauma or grief. And this is where your generational curses come from. This is where your parents put their curses on you. You're in denial of who you're allowed to be. You have to bargain and change yourself to be what you think they are. You're going to have to do a suppression of the anger or frustration you have around it. And the sadness of your inauthenticity is going to be a part of you, who you are. The feelings that you have around this, well, they're now wide open for fear, excuses, doubts, and distractions to start coming in for how they work to create the feelings that lead to your belief system, that lead to your identity. Well, the issue is, if people are starting with identity, we never get to the thing that's actually created the reason for it, because we can't go to radical acceptance because I don't know that this is the part I'm trying to get through for who I'm supposed to be and denying, which means my feelings about this will be suppressed. So my belief system has to be whatever mom wants me to be. And that's what I am. This means I'm the golden child. And you said also the sibling of the golden child. Their identity is also routed in the comparison in the belief system that I'm not as good as them. Both are running into a generational curse that's put into a wound from some loss that never even got addressed, which means if I'm going to cut your core out, I don't start at identity. That's just where it ends up happening because of your loss system has gone in overdrive. Your identity is revolved around what you've lost for authenticity and what you've lost for yourself. And I've seen the golden children. I've worked with them. I've seen the golden children who won everything. They had everything perfect. And now they have sabotage systems that are so powerful because they do not feel worthy of their own wins. And so they have gambling addictions or something is like, I'm going to like risk everything just so I can feel like the authenticity of who I am measures up with how much effort I've put in, which has been very little, by the way. And so going through this is how I'm able to kind of catch, like, I know that your belief system is corrupted for you are wanting to be chosen, wanted or unwanted, good or bad, you are worthy or unworthy. Who I am matters. Do I have purpose in my life and who I am? But then being able to go through the generational curses, like you said, the dissonance of my identity. I know that it's not correct. And I understand the belief system is not right, but I keep trying to fix it here and it's not working. That's because it's over here. That's why you're in the wrong spot. Go to your grief, go to the things that went wrong, and let's tear out the thing that makes it so I can't look at who I am. The lies that I tell myself to make my mother happy, my father proud. Well, I'm afraid to let them down or be who I am. That fear can come in through creating all of the different scenarios that scare the shit out of me for who I'll be if I'm unchosen, which means I will never be chosen if I am truly who I am. So I will be what they tell me to be. Well, we better get rid of that here. If we can't get to radical acceptance, I can't get into rewiring your belief without it coming back again because it's not really gone. Mm-hmm. We're just putting another mask on another mask and calling it better.
Right.
And this is why it's kind of cool where I'm following where you're going with this. And like, it seems correct, but being able to rewire beliefs and identity for chosen, worthy, and purpose, even the sabotage systems, I found most of the time it starts with something was lost. There's something inside of you. And I agree with you when you said most of it is loss. Loss is where it all comes in, where you lost something important to you. It could have been something that you loved about yourself that someone said, that's not good. Stop being that. Stop using that. Mm-hmm. And you change yourself for it. Mm-hmm. Thoughts?
No, I'm with you. You're doing great. Keep up the good work.
It's cool. One thing I enjoy about this is when I hang out with other people who are like, they're fucking good at what they do. Mm-hmm. And I go, I found the same answer you did. You're like, I've been doing this for 30 years. I'm like, I'm on this for 12. I'm like, and I found this. And you're like, I found it too. I'm like, we must be doing something right. You're like, I came in through spirit. I was like, I came in through body. You're like, right on, but we got the same core.
There you go.
We're doing something right. Looks like we're meeting in the middle. The connector is there.
Or there's a cluster of idiots on this sector of the internet.
Very true too. Could be that also. We're just creating new generational curses. I like the thing where you said the hate thing, where you said, I want to get in. I said, I read this and I try to be, I use the objective perspective as much as possible, but there is a point where you go like, you do know your parent sucks, right? You do know that they're the worst. And they'll get into defending who it is who's, created their identity around abuse. And it's the sins of the father, the sins of the mother. When they do create an identity for you to be what they think you should be, but it's never good enough.
Right. And yeah, and sometimes it's not always the abuse in the way people think of abuse. I get plenty of people saying, well, there's so many people that had it worse than me. And so they don't characterize what happened to them as abuse, but it really doesn't matter. If you're a child, your spirit is so fucking sensitive, and your malleability, your ability to be shaped into something, whether deliberately or accidentally, is very high. But it's not always the parent that does the harm, that inflicts the abuse. Very often, deep down, the worst hate, when we sort of plumb that well, is for the one that didn't do anything. It's for the one that stood by, or was the nice parent, or gave me hugs, but never actually stood up and shut down the bad parent. And for many of my clients, I dive into that, and for many of them, I help them see whatever it is they believe, and they realize, and each client is different. For some, the parent who commits the abuse commits the greater crime. For others, it's the one who allowed it to happen or tacitly endorsed it by not shutting it down. For some, they have much more bitter rage towards that parent. And so the idea of a bad parent or someone that we might hate, it doesn't always surface as the mean ogre, but oftentimes, and that's a real fucking revelation for a lot of clients, is when they've had this massive fucking blind spot because they realize, oh, saw my dad as the good one because he was always nice. And he was the one that, played with us, or he was the one that gave me a hug after mom went on a rampage, or vice versa. And then, but as we dig down deeper and to realize, sure, mom was only 29 when she had me, but or whatever, 19 when she had me. And I say, yeah, but that means by the time you were 9, mom was 28. And I guarantee that 28-year-old had infinitely more power than you did as a 9-year-old. She had the power to get you out. And see, the thing is, working with people nowadays, especially in the United States, Canada, Australia, UK, where a lot of my clients are from, just because English speaking, it's like, no, man, you didn't fucking grow up in the 1940s. If you grew up in the fucking, even, I grew up 60s, 70s, right? And then, of course, into the 80s, but it's just like, no, if you fucking grew up in the, 80s, 90s, there were in the US, there were resources fucking everywhere. Every fucking church had a fucking, either a fucking, battered women's shelter, or they knew where one was. Every fucking, not even big city, but small cities, 10,000 people or whatever. And there are plenty of small towns that could access those. There were so many fucking resources. Then people, oh, I did my best as a parent. Fuck you. There were fucking parenting books that have gone back decades and decades and decades. And a lot of them were really good. And many that were, some of the best shit came out of the 80s, 90s, and 2000s. It's like, fuck you. You didn't grow up in the fucking 40s. In other words, your parents could have done better. That parent who fucking normalized the shit that was done to you, that parent that didn't stick up with you because they were afraid of the other parent, I don't give a fuck. You think you're afraid? What about that fucking kid who has zero power, who can't drive a car, who can't run away, who can't go to a fucking shelter? It's just like, and a lot of parents will so then normalize the abuse, or they won't jump in front of the hail of the bullets, so to speak, the abuse coming at the child, or sometimes they'll get in the foxhole with the child and let the child be in the foxhole with you, or some will even put the child in front of the fucking bullets, so to speak, let the child, how many fucking clients where I'll say, so we'll just use, I'll just set it up with these two genders, okay, so your dad was the abusive one, and he would hit you and yell at you and put you down and shit, and they'll be, yeah. And then I'll say, and did your dad hit your mom? Oh, no, he never hit her. I'm like, oh, he was a fucking saint. So he didn't hit his wife, but he was happy to hit his fucking kid. Tough guy. And I'd say, and your mom was okay with that. It's just like, what the and it can go the other way. The gender can go the other way, or even a non-binary, it can go the other way. Okay. But the point is simply, it's like, what the fuck? You let your kid get hit, but you don't. You let your kid, eat fucking verbal abuse. It's like, what the actual fuck? But again, back to the original point, this notion that, the parent who lives in the shadow of the ogre parent, boy, that's an eye opener when I have a client who sees that and realizes, oh my fucking God, mom was worse, or dad was worse because he didn't fucking do anything. He was protecting himself at the expense of me. So all sorts of shit.
And who do they believe they're protecting when they're talking to you? And it's funny when you're like, no, mom was good one. Mom was okay. Or dad was good. Dad was, you're like, well, hold on a second before you start coming to their rescue. Hold on. They didn't come to yours. Like,
right.
I'm with you on this. And I think it goes back to that old, the Bible scripture where it says, like, all it takes for evil to thrive is the indifference of good men.
Yeah, and what's interesting in this is, who are they protecting? Yes, they're protecting, the parent who, whatever, who was nice or whatever. But what they're really protecting is their own self. They're protecting their own sense that I had a family, or that my whole life I've had someone who loved me. Yeah, I had the abusive parent, but mom was always loving and kind. So I always had someone who loved me. But then when we really look at it, we realize, Jesus Christ, fucking shit, mom didn't. Implying that mom protected herself. I was a pawn in her game, or dad protected himself. So in the end, the person they're really protecting is they're protecting their own self, very often from a realization such as, fucking hell, I have been alone the whole time. They're protecting themselves. And when you realize, and not every client comes to that, obviously, but that's one of the big ones. When you come to that realization, the realization is, not only have I been alone the whole time for some, because I had the abusive parent who clearly didn't fucking express love, or they'd give some love, but then they're dumping all this crap into my love cup as well as the love. And then you have the one who's just protecting themselves. That's not fucking love. And so what you realize is not just that I've been alone the whole time, but I'm alone now. Oh, I mean, all of a sudden the universe just opens up in its expanse. The universe feels so big and I feel small because I'm alone.
Yeah.
I've been alone the whole time, and I am alone now moving forward. And so really, yes, they are protecting that other parent very often unwittingly, but they're really protecting their own unwittingly, protecting their own sense of lovability, their own sense of feeling connected to something, grounded in something, versus just floating around out in fucking space. So yeah, I mean, and that's the shit where it's like, that's the other side of my work. It's one thing, I got to be tough and I got to confront people with shit. But in the end, all the fucking hard shit that I push people to and challenge them, and it's badass counseling. But in the end, they have to know that they wouldn't let me go there if they didn't. They have to know that they're surrounded in my work with them, that ultimately that it's surrounded by love.
Yeah.
They have to feel love.
Worthy.
And they have to know that I'm not doing this to hurt them. I'm crawling down their throat. I'm in there doing battles with the dragons from their past. I'm not hurting them. I'm not trying to hurt them, but they have to know ultimately that I love them, and that I'm here to help. So that means and this is where, it just comes with experience, that it's just knowing when to push, when to pull, when to, drive fucking daggers in them, and when to just hold their hand and soothe them. And it's not one size fits all.
Mm-hmm. There's only two kinds of warriors. You're either trained or untrained, and you're speaking warrior talk to me. I'm like, are we fighting demons today? Are we breaking curses today? Are we slaying a dragon today? Like, what? Open the door and let's see what comes out. And so I'm locking shields with you because I care about you, not because I'm here to get your ass kicked. Like, we need to fight whatever's about to come out. Now you're either ready or you're not ready. I'll show you how to battle this thing, and then we're going in.
Right.
Yeah, I agree with you very much. And the thing that's too is, like, it's interesting when we get into the kid stuff where they start doing that protection system and realize I've always been alone. Or one of the bigger ones too I run into is I never felt safe.
Right.
Never felt safe. I never felt like there was someone protecting me, looking out for me, making sure like the protector was the one who was hurting me.
Right. Yeah, especially if there's volatility in the home, or if the messaging that I'm getting at school, let's say bullying and so forth, isn't countered by some counter message of acceptance and approval and kindness at home, then that child is not going to feel safe anywhere. Now, a lot of kids plenty grow up in a home, the volatile home, or the walking on eggshells home, but then school becomes their refuge. Plenty of kids have been saved by school. Whether it's teachers who encourage them, or a favorite coach who just gave them love and was kind, or a shop teacher who took them under their wing and helped them cultivate their talents with their hands and their brain to fix things, whatever it is. But if you're eating shit on both ends, yeah, man, you're never going to feel fucking safe. And you fish out of water, and you're going to adapt. That child's just going to adapt in what they're either going to shut down, or they're going to adapt they're going to find some sense of connection. That's that slippery slope then down into potentially drugs, or finding your refuge in, giving your body away for a lot of young women. And
Mhm.
yeah, and
That's control.
yeah.
That's where I started finding it gets into control. And that's where it gets into like the system itself for grieving, which is the denial, bargaining, anger, depression is linked to the denial goes into retreat, or that's the flight. That's suppress yourself, hide yourself, put yourself down. And denial is directly connected to that control system of like suppression that goes also into I don't want to accept the reality of my life, and I
Mhm.
don't like what my life is, and I need to feel good. And remember, even on my map, like distractions come in through your pleasure system, and denial can disguise itself as protection itself. And so, like, I'm safe if I'm this way, so I'll be that. But I really hate my reality of what I am, and I need to not think about it. So I need to be numb, or I need to be high, or I need to be, chosen by somebody for something, or I need to go towards, could be porn, or it could be shopping online, or it could be social media, or it could be attention, or it could be there's something I need to feel good, even at the cost of myself long term feeling bad. I
Mhm.
need to feel good. So denial plus distractions comes in through two pleasure systems to make it so that it creates addiction.
Yeah, and that works. I mean,
Yeah.
I've had plenty of clients with, whether it's eating disorders or, as I'm sure you have too, and addictions and all this, and they're trying to escape that life of theirs. They're always trying to escape, escape, escape.
Yeah.
It works, and that bottle or the whatever it is really becomes your best friend, insofar as it's the only thing that gives you the power to shut off all the pain, or to feel something if your life itself just makes you numb. But the thing is, it always comes with a hangover of some sort or a crash of some sort. And we live that cycle enough times. If you live that high crash, or that numbing and then being jarred back into reality, if you live that enough times, what you find yourself really longing for is a high where there's no, so to speak, a high where there's no um,
Crash.
hangover, but where there's a carryover.
Yeah.
In other words, some sort of lasting high, or some sort of lasting. And that only happens ultimately not by getting rid of your addiction. That's why I tell people, they say, oh, do you work with addictions? I said, I'm not an addiction specialist, but I've worked with tons of people who had addictions. But I'm not going to do what fundamentally, what a lot of, not all, but a lot of rehab does, whatever. I don't give a fuck if you have your addiction. Your addiction is like, that's the sore throat. That's your upset stomach. That's the fever, but it's not the fucking virus causing all of it. We have
Correct.
to go in. So you keep your addiction for now. And if you decide you want to, shirk it later, fine. You shed it later. But ultimately, the more we get the source, the root causes out, that addiction, that need to escape your life just sort of floats away, because you finally begun to live and create a life that actually brings peace,
Mhm.
rather than this incessant unrest inside.
Correct. And like this is where you and I are already going against the general teachings that they're doing for conventional therapy, conventional counseling, where they're treating the symptoms and not the cause. And I'm seeing a lot more of here's a medication for you, that whenever I work with people, I'm like, no, no, keep your medication until you feel like you don't need it. Let's
Mhm.
get rid of the reason you even had the need for it.
Right.
And like this works for both addiction and anxiety.
Mhm.
Like I've cured people of anxiety forever because I trained you how to fight it. It's just fear. Like I'll teach you how to fight fear. It's beatable. You just have to know which thing it is and how to fight it. And when
Mhm.
you're trained, when it comes up, I just know which thing I'm fighting. And so I don't need to panic. I don't need to use this ability that I have that's actually a superpower as a crutch. And like this is where I get into those things too. But I'm right there with you where we have an instant gratification society and people live in discomfort instead of visit discomfort. And that's probably more of a Goggins thing than anything, where he says, like, think about like working out, for example. Like the same thing, like, well, you'll visit discomfort for like 30 minutes or an hour. I'll be uncomfortable. I'll put myself through like, physical anguish. I'll push my body to its limits, and I'll sweat and it'll be hard and I'm pushing, right? Well, you'll do that for like 30 minutes to an hour. You'll just visit out of your 24 hours. It's just I'm visiting discomfort. But how do you feel the rest of the day? Well, I feel better the rest of the day because I just visited for a little bit. Well, people will go, I don't want to go through the work. I don't want to do that hard visit discomfort. And so I'm going to skip that. And then the rest of the day, they feel miserable. So instead of visiting discomfort and feeling good long term because you did work, they're going to skip work because they don't want to be uncomfortable and then live in discomfort.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, no, no, let's go ahead and train just a little differently. Instead of an instant gratification of do nothing and then feel terrible, let's do a little bit of something and then feel better. So you no longer have to go to a vice to feel better because you feel terrible all day.
Mm-hmm.
And just that small, like even just one, just listen, give me 30 minutes. We're going to visit for just a little. Like, we don't have to make this your whole lifestyle. Let's just change it a little. And just those kind of instant gratification versus let's visit discomfort has changed the mentality so people can have a fighting fucking chance.
Mm-hmm.
So same thing with anxiety. I don't view anxiety as a disorder. I view it as a superpower that you just don't have control over yet. You're time traveling, man. You're looking into the future. You're creating all the scenarios. And not only are you creating scenarios, you're also bringing your feelings and having an emotional attachment to all of the possibilities that could go wrong. That's fucking amazing, man. I'm going into 50 different futures and I'm having an emotional response in each one. That's a superpower. You're time traveling.
Mm-hmm.
But do you control that power? Or does that power control you? Because a trained version of that power is clairvoyance.
Right.
I'm looking into the future and learning life lessons that I may be more prepared for if it does go this way or that way. But then I can delete that and be either ready or not ready. And I'm kind of good no matter which scenario. And I go through like 7 things to go like, let's see if you have any tools here. Let's see if you're ready for if something does happen unexpectedly. And let's look at what you got. And we start getting into, do you have problem solving skills? Do you have creativity to get outside the box if you need to? Do you have resourcefulness? Do you have a support system at all? Do you have any positive outlets to lower down the pressure for you? Do you have a faith system in any capacity that you are not the center of all things and you can rely on something more than you? Can you do an assessment of survivability to this point? And do you have more experience now to handle what happens than you did when you went through things less experienced? Can we just look at where you're at? Aren't we supposed to be more curious what the reality is instead of the worries of what it could be? Because it seems like once you know, you're fucking ready. It's kind of badass when you go like, well, let's bring it on then. Let's see what it's gonna be. Like,
Yep.
so I'm with you, man. It's cool to watch another warrior be able to speak the same language coming at it, and like, we go in and we fight.
Mm.
We're gonna go and kill these things together.
Mm.
And I definitely honor you as a warrior too, to say like I see you going in and saying we're not going to do this fluffy hold flowers with each other thing first. First, we got to kill the monsters, and then we bring flowers back from hell for people to go look what we've done.
Mm.
And I think it's pretty badass. I concur with why you say this is badass counseling,
Mm.
because nobody's ever come into the warrior's way and gone, well, that was easy. Like, we don't do it the easy way. We're gonna gut that shit.
Amen.
This is cool, man. It's very cool. There's another thing I wanted to get into for you. Are you good on that topic? Because I feel like we just fucking just uppercutted that in the nuts.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Right on, dude. Let's see. I want to get into, we did the strength thing and real vulnerability. That was awesome. Distrust your inner voice and then being able to trust your authenticity. I like that. Let's see. We need to trust what you don't. All right. And we have talked about trust. If you had something right now, I want to go into something with you that's like a little bit more like you at the moment. We go into suicide talk. We go into the darkest of the darkest. I got a person this weekend. I'm going to be going in hard because they're like at bottom. I'm like, I got to come pull you out. Like, I know that these are there. When we're going through the darkest of darkest, I've got a lot of veterans, especially right now, where it's like, man, my vets, they don't see a way out. What hope can we give, or what things can you go right now? Like, hey, listen, like, you don't have to go it alone. You're not fucking crazy. Like, you're not broken. Like, you just need something to make it so you can have that purpose, that belonging, that light, anything. What have you been doing, and how can people reach out to you to be able to find that camaraderie or hope, or that?
I don't
What do
I
you?
was in a 12-year suicidal depression myself. I committed suicide. I've got the 9-inch scars up my forearms to show. And I don't know. I sort of come at it a little differently. If life is sitting at its fat ass right on your fucking head and you can't breathe, and it's been that way for 2 or 8 or 20 years, no amount of focusing on a good thing it's beyond that. It's so far past that. If you're at the point, I mean, your internal sort of pilot light, it's just flickering now. If you're in that discussion, it's just flickering. And so it just defaults back to the shit we've already been talking about, that this is where it requires just really going into the pain and everything inside that love cup, that now more than ever, because it doesn't matter if I put in, 1 drop of sweet stuff or 4 drops of sweet stuff inside a love cup that's full of manure and rocks and sludge and crud and infestations of maggots in there. We have to go in there. And so, you may or may not know, with all my clients, my opening session is a mandatory 4 to 6 hours. We set it in advance, but usually I set the 6. And follow-up sessions are never less than 2 hours. Because, excuse me, especially when we're getting into the heavy stuff. And again, by the time somebody's knocking on my door, it's the heavy stuff. But particularly in cases of suicide, or I'll get a cop calling me and saying, I've got my service revolver in one hand and, Jack Daniels in the other, or whatever. I go directly into what hurts the most right now. What are you struggling with? What's the hardest part right now? And we address this. And of course, usually it's, my wife this, or my kids that, or it's everything. Everything's going bad, or I've lost everything, or what have you. And so we have to go into it and into it and into it. And then at some point, after the initial, flushing of all of what's ever addressing them now, at some point, it won't be in the first session or whatever, but we're going into then the shit of the past, that because it's the shit of the past of what you were conditioned to believe about yourself that has caused you to allow things to get this bad, and that has caused you to miss red flags, that has caused you to live in a life where your belief system of strength is that strength is just your capacity to endure more and more and more. Now, that's part of strength, but if that's your only fucking notion of strength, you'll fucking find yourself at the suicide point at some point, or you'll find yourself under a mountain of shit, or you'll find yourself self-medicating, which is just a ridiculous term, but self-medicating with everything. Why? Because you're taking on more and more. Give me bigger rocks. Give me bigger rocks. And it's like, you can do the tough guy thing or the tough broad thing all you want. That shit's going to weigh you the fuck down. Because what you're missing is that other half of happiness, particularly in relationships, and but especially obviously relationship with self, but relationship with others, is strength is the ability to say no. And so many people, if their definition of strength is how much I can endure, they lack the ability to say no. So I'll get, as long as we're having sort of the tough guy conversation, I have plenty of clients who they're tough guys when it comes to life and their work and their go-getters and their conquerors and all this shit. But maybe when it comes to, because let's just say for instance, they had a mother who was dominating. I'm just using mother in this case. I used father, the last one. They have a mother who was dominating and abused the shit out of them or whatever, or taught them to be mommy's little fucking therapist or whatever it is. Then they get into their fucking marriage and they can't say no. Do you know how many strong, tough guy men walk in the front door and they're to use Sam Kinnison's old thing, he'd take the microphone, he'd say, he has the microphone, you have the head of the microphone, then the handle of the microphone, he'd pop the handle off. When you walk in the door, your wife pops the handle, pops your dick off and says, I got your dick now. And it's not even about being a tough guy or not being a tough guy. It's like, when it comes to women in your life, some men just don't know how to say no, don't know how to stand up for themselves, or say, you're hurting my feelings. This just hurts, or it's mean, or no, I don't want us to have another child, or I want us to have children. I don't want us to not, whatever it is. The point is that the ability to say no and the ability to endure. You have to have true strength is about both of those. It's not just I can endure, I can endure, I can endure. And true strength is the ability not just to say no and don't transgress my boundaries. It's the ability to say how I really feel. I get plenty of clients. I remember I had a cop here in the city, and good guy, aging and everything, and 50s, whatever, my age. And he said, he was dating a woman. He had been married before, but he was been dating this woman for about, I don't know, a few months, whatever. And then it progressed for about a year that they were dating. And he said, I have done everything for her. I have done everything, and I'm dissatisfied. And I said, you're right. And, I'd been counseling him a bit. And I said, but there's one thing that you haven't done. There's one thing that you haven't given her. And he says, what the fuck are you talking about? Even you Sven, say that I've given her everything and all this. The one thing you haven't given her is the truth of how you feel. That when she hurts your feelings, or when she's fucking rude, or when she says, oh, I couldn't text you all day, I was so busy. And I'm like, really? You can't fucking text? Really? 5 fucking seconds to send a fucking text? Fuck you. Or, or when she just hurts you, she doesn't fucking return your call, or, whatever. It's like, but you didn't put your feelings out there and say, hey, that didn't feel good, or you started allowing it in the beginning rather than walking away in the beginning. So for part of the definition of strength is also the strength, as we were talking about earlier, to go into the hard stuff, or go into how I really feel. That's scary stuff. And really fucking scary, because the other person may breathe fire down your throat or whatever it is. And so back to the original question on suicide, it's going into the shit, but eventually of what's addressing them now. We're just going to massive shoveling mode. It's like the hurricane is raging outside and the basement is filling full of water, and we just start bailing water. I go in, and that's what we do. And we keep doing it till we get them a little breathing room that day. And then we go back in the next day or a week later, and whatever it is. But for me, everything is about getting all that shit out of there. It has, especially in the case of suicide, so that at the very least, in the notion of that pilot light, to mix all of my metaphors here, that tube that sends the gas to the spark, the tube under your water heater, or that tube has been so corroded that no gas can get to that flame to make the flame, that your internal divine spark, to make it bigger, to come back to life, that it's become so corroded with crap and pain and bullshit beliefs you've been taught about yourself. And so what we got to do is get in there and sort of burrow out that hole, that at least for today, get a little more in there. And we don't do that by trying to force in more gas, force in more good. We do it by getting out more of the bad. And that's the deep dive, shit.
Man, first off, I honor you for being able to share like your 9-year battle also. Like, it's nasty, dude. It's hard.
Yeah.
But then also, like I concur. Like, it's not about talk about good feelings, good feelings, good feelings. We do have to clear out the fucking baggage. We got to get rid of the pain, man. Like, how are you supposed to move when you can't move? And this is where like the self-talk that goes into depression, the negative worth, the way you speak to yourself starts adding on your doubts and your shame to make it so your identity is like, I do not have any value to exist. I am a piece of shit. I am garbage. I am worthless. I am unlovable. And those things start creating the belief system that you can't see any good. So don't try and give me a few drops of sugar on my garbage and my shit and my trash and my maggots.
Yeah.
I very much agree with you.
Yeah. And one of the things, sort of having been there myself, and I have a different approach regarding suicide, sort of having been there and just worked with a lot of suicidal people in my life, and known people in that dark, dark, dark place, is I tell them, I said, listen, if you choose to kill yourself, I honor that. And I will respect your grave. And I would go and I would to your grave and speak well of you and kindly to you. I wouldn't urinate on your grave. I don't believe in, I mean, there's that old biblical line from, Jesus, not that I'm all Jesus-y and shit, but I'll steal from anybody, where Jesus said, blessed are the poor in spirit. Well, who's poorer in spirit than someone who's suicidal? Who? Nobody. And so I believe that I have an obligation to come in and a desire, having been there, to come in with just love and to say, hey, if you need to do this for you, I understand. I understand. I'm here to fight all the demons inside and get that crud out. And I'll do everything I can. But in the end, if that's what you choose, know that you go to your death with one person who understands and one person who loves you anyway. And I know, I'm sure you have other people that really do love you who aren't able to help you, even though they may want to. But I guess what I'm getting at is I don't shame people for suicide, because that really doesn't help anything. So yeah.
They're already shaming themselves enough. They don't need another person in the mix to validate
Right.
it.
Right.
Yeah, I'm with you there. Can I share like a little bit of what's been working on our side?
Yeah.
I've been leaning real hard. So the Warriors Way, we not only train through our boot camp of being able to know thyself, know thy enemies, and know how to battle, but we also have such a deep connection to just a brotherhood of men who all team up together and do like the black box thinking. This is like, if one alpha has found a thing that works, he shares with all alphas. We all converge and like, oh, that's great information. I can use that. And then we can break to our packs and we all lead to be the best fathers, husbands, brothers, sons like that we could possibly be. And so we take as much information. How many books have you read? How many books have I read? How many books has that guy gone through? And how many thousands of years of information have we absorbed and we can share between each other to make it so we're all stronger? That has been the foundation. Is the brotherhood has become really what has worked. It's not me, it's each other working together, and men need men. We need each other. We build anything. We can defend the village, we can build the skyscraper, we can be a strong football team. And I've never seen anybody see the Navy SEAL team and go, what a bunch of bitches for working together. Like, no, you will get fucked up. Like, that is, you don't fuck with that team. They're too fucking tough together. And I do the same thing with our guys. The suicide calls, I was with you. I've sat with the guys who are sitting with the gun and the Jack Daniels. I know the conversation. I know the different personality types. And I'm the only one who takes those calls. Too much liability. So I am with you. I've had these conversations. And it would be every like other week or so, there'd be somebody who's in this rock bottom at 2 a.m. Like those would be there. We had a couple guys right now who run a nighttime group. We just call it the fellowship, and this is where the guys just hang. We don't have to go into battle. You don't have to bring up your shit. You can talk about fishing. You can talk about trucks. You can talk about your lady. I don't give it. Talk about whatever you want, man. Just come and hang out. And one of the guys, his gift, Phil, he's just likable. That's his whole, he's just likable, Phil. He's just sweet dude. He's just really nice. He's like, I just want to make a group where we just hang out. I said, let's do it, Phil. This nighttime group sometimes goes to like 1 or 2 a.m, man. They just hang out. And since we started that group, it's coming up on a year now. All the guys who have come in who have had these dark thoughts, all the demons that come out in the middle of the night, all the guys who struggle, they just come and hang out. And because of belonging, because of purpose, because of value, because of love, because of camaraderie, because of feeling heard, feeling needed, like we haven't had any suicide calls since we started this group.
That's great.
That's amazing, right? I didn't anticipate that. Just you belonging somewhere, you're a part of something, is enough. It's enough to keep fighting. It's enough to keep digging the shit out. It's enough to have, hey, and they can go into battle. These guys are all warriors. It's not that they don't know how to go into battle. We've gone in and fought demons together. They just don't need to. If you don't want to, we can talk about funny stuff or play video games together or just hang out.
It's great.
It's wild that has been so successful, because like brothers need brothers. We need each other. And anybody who thinks that they're the toughest because they're the lone wolf, the phalanx is just stronger. Like, to fight that wall of shields and those Spartans all locked together, way tougher than just the one guy out there alone. And so like that's where we've leaned in, and like our program has gone that direction where like if you really want transformation, be in a place where you can take your armor off. You can train new abilities, skills to know thyself, know how to battle, and know which things are out there. And then now you can be an authentic pack leader because you hang out with authentic pack leaders. And if you are the average of who you hang out with most, hang out with a bunch of fucking warriors and your damsel bullshit goes out the window. Like, This is where I'm just sharing just part of what's worked that I
Yeah,
didn't anticipate would be so
great.
effective. And
That's great.
if any of this helps you in any way for your stuff, please take it. Like there's
I applaud you for what you're doing.
like, this is where like I also like say like, how could I support you? And then what things can I do? Cause you're in the mix, man. And
Mhm.
also if there's ever anything I could do to make it so that you have support on your end too, I'll walk into hell with you, bro.
Very
I
kind of
lock
you.
shields with you, like because not enough people know what that is. And so you see a lot of people today who are trained to treat symptoms and not go in and kill curses.
Amen.
Give medication instead of fight a demon, and try and blame and shame others in their past and say it's not your fault, not your fault, instead of going, let's kill this dragon so it stops burning down all of your village.
Love it. Good for you, man. That's awesome.
Well, good for you also, because
Thank
we've saved a lot of lives and people won't know the ripple effect for the battles you're willing to endure for others.
you. We're each just sort of brightening the corner where we are.
Yeah, it's an honor, man. It's very cool to see another one like you. I'm gonna lean us right into the last thing here. I want to stay on this boundaries thing that you're talking about, where like the strength means endure instead of strength means no. And this is a gender fluid. This goes, everybody has this
Absolutely.
codependency. This runs into like everybody runs into my love comes from achievement or serving you or being of value because I know that if you need me, that makes it so I can feel safe and secure that my needing you won't be, thrown away. I won't be discarded. I can feel like I can just work hard enough for you to love me, which
Mhm.
obviously I think I watched your narcissist video where people who are deep takers are looking for people who are deep givers.
Well,
And
they
they're
tend to naturally find themselves, but yes,
correct. Because
because everybody's happy for a
they look
minute.
for the most needy. They look for the ones who like they need the most, and that makes me have the most security because I can give what they need because they need so much. That means I can give a lot, and I'll never get left.
Mhm.
And that codependency and having no boundaries does create an entire curse system for children. Going, if this is what love is supposed to be, well, then love is pain. Love is only taking and being just abused and used and never good enough.
That's right.
And, kids are growing up in this just constant non-reciprocal relationship and calling it what marriage is.
Mhm.
Let's go into like, I don't think that enough people are clear enough on what is a healthy boundary. They know the idea of it, but people are oftentimes using demands as boundaries, and that's not a boundary.
What would you say?
All right, I love it. Look at you. Answer questions with questions. I see you. All
Yeah,
right.
I'm
So,
just curious.
when we do boundary training, it's very important to understand the difference between a boundary is not about what other people do, but how you choose to handle what other people do. So, example, if you don't check your emails on the weekend and you say, hey, Rick, don't send me any emails on the weekend. Well, now you're telling me what I can and can't do. That's a demand. But if you say you can send them on the weekend, I'm just not checking till Monday. Well, that's how you're going to handle whatever I do. So the boundary is not that I need to answer immediately. It's just know that I won't answer till Monday because I don't check emails on the weekend. That's a
Mhm.
boundary. If you and I are talking and you're like, fuck you, you fucking asshole. And I'm like, dude, you got to chill it out. If you don't chill it out, I'm going to have to end this call. That's a boundary. I will remove the privilege of our conversation because you are no longer respecting it enough for you to have it. But if I
Mhm.
go, you're not allowed to talk to me like that, Sven. Don't talk to me that way. Well, now I'm telling you how you're allowed to be.
Right.
That's not a boundary. That's a demand. And so when we teach boundaries, we make it so like at least you have to know thyself well enough that if you're compromising your authenticity for somebody else's judgment, somebody else's shame, their guilt, their blame, well, you're not holding a boundary. I'm like, I'm going to hold my ground here. You're treating me in a way that I know goes against who I really am. And I'm going to have to remove the privilege of me being here
Mhm.
if you can't respect that.
Mhm.
This is standards and boundaries instead of expectations and demands.
Love it.
Yeah. And so like I know that like the strength of what I can endure versus where do I hold my line.
Mhm.
I don't know if that's
Agree. No, I agree with you. And I in terms of knowing where to hold your line, then so you address the very important mechanics of how, and that, it's on one hand, my trying to tell you, well, don't fucking do that. I mean, you can do that. I can tell you not to do it, but don't get frustrated if the other person doesn't change their fucking behavior just because you want it.
right.
And so it comes from a mentality of you have to change to make me happy. And it's easier to do that, to say, you need to not send me those emails on the weekends. It's easier to you, rather than to find, it's harder. It requires more strength to say, I'm just not going to take it. That I matter enough. And so we expect other people to change, which, we're sort of conditioned to do our whole lives. But it's harder to say, no, the responsibility is on me. And so it's really, same shit, different language. I talk about allowing. What do you allow?
Mm-hmm.
And in terms of someone, again, transgressing your boundaries, and the way to know what you will allow and won't allow, is simply, does it feel good or does it feel bad? It's really that fucking simple. And so that gets into the other side of allowing, not just what I'll allow. Well, I won't allow that because it feels bad. I won't allow you to, speak ill of me or put me down or whatever. But it's also the really hard part about the word allow is, do you actually allow up your own feelings so that you know what feels bad, so that you know what not to allow in the other person? But also, do you have the courage to allow up your no? Because if you've been conditioned to believe as a child that your voice doesn't matter, you're not allowed to have feelings, as every fucking male is. Not every, that's not right, but
You have to
as so many
suppress a lot.
males
Yeah.
are, you're not allowed to have feelings, and feelings are for pussies, and feelings, blah, blah, blah. Well, good luck with that one. Because then what you're fundamentally saying is, the only feeling I'm allowed to have is anger, right? That's the only one we get.
Well, even that's shamed once you're in a relationship. So you can't do that once you're in a relationship.
And so you don't allow up the saying, I'm hurt. Well, guess what? You're going to endure so much fucking shit because you're not allowing yourself to be authentic. So it's, what do I allow or not allow from the other person? But do I allow because how I feel in a situation, that's your internal barometer of what's really going on. And so this is why when the Buddhists talk about awareness, that life begins at awareness. And again, I'm not Buddhist, but I'll steal.
Yeah.
That it's not just aware of what's going on around me, but ultimately it's aware of what's going inside, because that is what is enabling me to say, oh, I don't like this event because it doesn't feel good.
Mm-hmm.
Now, maybe you do. Now, some people, though, do feel it, but they don't give themselves permission to actually speak it up. So we've got to clean out that vessel. We got to get out the crud from where their authentic feeling comes from, but then clean out the vessel that enables them, gives them the courage to put it out there. And it's terrifying.
Yeah.
It's terrifying if you've never stood up on your feelings before. And this has nothing to do with, demanding and always getting my way. It's so much deeper and scarier than that. It's saying that this doesn't feel good, or you're hurting my feelings, or I don't want to be treated this way, or wow, I really fucking feel sad. That, God damn, I feel sad, and allowing that to get out. Otherwise, you won't know where to put up your boundaries here. And I just had a client fucking this morning, that the person didn't know what they felt. And so they didn't know. Now that they're out of this relationship, the relationship had to get so bad, so extreme, that they finally felt it. But now moving forward, I don't know who I am. I don't know what I want because I don't know really what I feel. And so that's why it's allowing those feelings up. That's your GPS. And it's enabling, as I tell people all the time, the path to discovering who you are requires discovering who you're not, which requires honoring those feelings coming up that say, not this. Not this. In Hindi, the Hindi language, there's a word neti, and neti simply means not this. And sometimes in life, we don't know what the path is. All we can say is neti, neti, neti. sort of sifting through all the things that are not me, and eventually you're going to get down to that which is me and does resonate like a string inside a piano inside of me. But yeah, that notion of allowing, I feel, is really a critical element to boundaries.
Yeah, I love that you took the introspection aspect of allow. Usually most people would say, "What do you allow?" And it seems like external. I don't
Mm-hmm.
allow that. I don't allow that. I don't allow that. But
Right.
like this is where like I very much resonate with where you're at with this, because the first section is know thyself, so you can set a boundary. And the very first weapon we teach is awareness. It all begins with awareness, and I very much agree with the Buddhists. It begins with, did you even see it? Because you cannot make a choice you do not know exists. And if you don't know why you feel the way you are, and what you're working through, or what's even going on, or what it's going on in here to even set a boundary, or what you will allow for yourself, the simplicity of the decision isn't allowed to exist because you don't know of it.
Right.
And so that's where it gets complicated. You need to change to make me happy is something that you said. It's like, did you know why?
Mm-hmm.
And I use why as a weapon, because right now, even in negotiations, why is a bad word. Triggers people. Of course it triggers people because it requires some sort of accountability.
Right.
You're not going to like it having the actual answer for the reason why you're trying to control others, or trying to dominate, or dictate. You're not going to enjoy being called out like you are doing a behavior. Do you understand the reason for it?
Mm-hmm.
So I like that you took the word allow and made it introspective, like fucking honors to that. That's badass. And know thyself, and then awareness is the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
One thing I want to get into too is the choices. I talk about choices being simple. I say every choice is simple. It doesn't mean easy. No, that's not the same. Simple and easy is not the same. And people have been like, well, what about really difficult choices like, am I going to do chemotherapy or not for my cancer? That's not an easy choice. I'm like, I didn't say it was easy. It's going to start off with, are you going to do that, or are you not going to do that?
Mm-hmm.
And then you're going to go through all of the pros and cons and all of the things that could go right or could go wrong. And if this works or doesn't work. And at the end of it, you end up right back at the beginning of, or are you going to do it, or are you not going to do it? Are you going to stay in this abusive relationship, or are you going to go? You got all of the reasons for your codependencies and things. They're all there. But at the end of all of the things that you work through emotionally, so are you going to stay, or are you going to go? Like, it's still the same choice.
Mm-hmm.
And this is where I think that the choices are simple. It doesn't mean easy by any means. So when it comes to the thing that's the hardest, and you mentioned it earlier, whereas tough guys are good when it comes to work, and when it comes to, business, or it comes to knowledge, or it comes to even the spirit side, we can be pretty hard on, like, I'll fight anything. I'm ready to go into the firefight. I'm ready to battle. I'm ready to go into conflict or physical altercation or argument or debate. Let's go, except for this love side.
Mm-hmm.
Love side seems to have, like, I have a flight mechanism on this one, where guys have the suppress themselves and they become small. Like, you've seen those guys where Kennison, I got your dick. Like you're the man outside of it. I've talked to billionaires who are there. I'm a king at work. And then I come home and I'm treated less than a peasant at home. What the fuck? Like, this love side has got different rules. This is where I've been leaning more into, like, the healthy autonomy. And I just did a video with Brandon, Mr. Gratitude. I did a video with him when he says not 50-50, it's 100-100, and we make a whole. Like, it's 200 together makes a relationship. Like, I'm solid, you're solid, and we complement each other, not complete each other. What is your thought on autonomy and, like, a healthy relationship? Like, I'm able to be separate from you. If ever you, like, violate my core non-negotiables, then I have to go, and have the ability to, without being completely trapped, stuck, or feel like I'm a prisoner in my own relationship.
Well, if I'm feeling like I'm a prisoner in my own relationship, that's on me, because no person is a prisoner in any relation. I mean, there are, excessive abuse particularly if you're a female. If there is, the threat of physicality, though plenty of males too. I was in abusive relationship where I was being abused. But if you're feeling trapped, doesn't it raise the question? My first question, if someone's saying to me, well, I feel trapped in this relationship, my question is, Why? In what way above all else do you feel trapped? And it goes back to what we were talking about earlier, this notion of, what that you were talking about, this simple decision thing, and or someone feeling trapped, or autonomy in a relationship. Ultimately, so much of my work, as in 90% of my work, is all on fear. And what really, I tell people all the time, if you can never figure out why someone's doing something that doesn't make sense, or they're not doing something that would make sense, or even if it's yourself, always ask yourself the question, what's the primary fear driving the behavior? Speculate the answers, list them out, and then go with the biggest, hairiest, scariest one, because I bet my left testicle, if Vegas were giving me odds, that is exactly what it is. People are driven by that fear. And so if you're feeling trapped in a relationship, it's because you're afraid of something. There is some fear in leaving that you have. Maybe I'd be alone, or Christ, what would my parents say? Or I fear, my kids growing up in a 2-parent home, or I fear my parent having to be with that other parent half the time, or my child having to be with that parent the other half the time. You fear something that makes you feel trapped. You fear being thought of as the bad guy. You fear their blowback. Maybe you love them so much that you fear, but you don't want to be in the relationship so much. You fear hurting them. Whatever it is, it's always fucking fear. It's always fucking fear. And so in those decisions, for instance, of, should I stay or should I go, or any other major decision, my work is always in simply where's the biggest fear if you go? What's the biggest fear if you stay? And then let's weigh your fears. Everything boils down to fucking fear. That once we can unearth those and name those, especially the big ones, then what's underneath is what I really want. And I think what we discover is that people know what they want, but they're terrified of executing what they really want. So if you're in a relationship, how do you maintain autonomy in a relationship? Well, first of all, you have to be, you reach a point, and I wasn't this way in my 20s or my 30s. I wasn't. But now I've been in a relationship. I'm 56 and my girlfriend is 60, and we've been in a relationship for 10 years. And if she needs to go, she needs to go. We'll hug, we'll kiss, we'll cry, well, thanks for the memories. And then life goes on, and I will grieve, but in the end, life goes on. Well, it took a couple of failed, serious long-term relationships or marriages to make that happen, to get to the point where that's okay. But that doesn't keep me from being vulnerable within the relationship. I'm willing to be vulnerable, knowing that I could get hurt again. And if I do, and so many people don't want to do that, it hurts so much. I don't want to do that because it hurts so much. But once you've done the work of actually grieving and flushing out all of the pain and writing those letters to your ex that you don't send and getting it out, now I have the tools, and now I'm not quite as afraid. I always tell people, the grand part of going through hell is that it's not as scary the second time, or it's definitely not as scary the third time, because you begin to see the waymarks and you begin to know that I have the tools to get out and I will grieve. So regarding autonomy within a relationship, it's just the willingness, or it's sorting out the fears so that I know that if I have to exit, or if someone is treating me poorly, I can exit, or I can say, please don't treat me that way. However, that being said, within that greater context of not just I'm not afraid of that, but it's rooting out those fears, identifying what my real fears are in a relationship. Fear that I got a client right now. He's he's still struggling from a divorce that happened X number of years ago. And he says, Sven, she was the most beautiful woman I've ever met in my life. I'm never going to have someone that great again. I'm a 6. I got lucky to have a 10. And so this notion, when he was in the relationship, he was terrified of losing her because he knew he was never going to. And for him, that having beauty got him aroused sexually, but it also got him, a lot of cool points with friends and so on and so forth. But came at a hell of a price in that marriage. But that is what kept him neutered in the relationship and had him not standing up for his own autonomy, or saying, no, that's not okay. You don't get to treat me that way. And it ended up blowing up in the end. And that's, sort of a broken record for plenty of relationships. Where I'm going with this, though, is if you have that power going into a relationship where you're not afraid of losing the person, because you know that you have that if it ends, if she leaves, if she rejects me, I'll be okay. And not just, I'll power through, but I'll allow myself to grieve, and then I'll flush out the pain and I'll be able to stand back up. I'll allow myself to not just get knocked down, but to stay down and allow myself to be down. because the down is the soul's desire to grieve. Depression is a gift. It's the soul's desire to finally bring healing. Okay. So then if I go into a relationship knowing that I'll be okay, I don't want it to end, but knowing I'll be okay, even if it does, then what that means is I can begin to, and if I find someone who is of that same sort of strength or suppleness to life, that they, they've grieved and they know how and so forth, then we can have a relationship. And this is what it is with my partner, that in this relationship, my sole goal is to help her become her most authentic self and fly at full fucking wingspan, even if it means leaving me. And her goal, and she would say so, is to help Sven become his fullest sense of self, fly at full wingspan, even if it means me leaving him. Does she want that? No. Do I want that? No. But if that's where it leads, that's okay. Versus, I want you to fly with clipped wings so that you'll stay because I need you. You're my love source, or whatever it is. So that autonomy is the sense of autonomy in a relationship, and creating a relationship where we're both here for the upbuilding of each other, demands going down and identifying what my fears are in creating such a relationship, allowing my wants and needs out there, but also giving of myself to serve this person. It's both. So.
Bro, that's exactly the answer I found too. I dug the fuck out of that hole to find the same thing. Damn it, you're good. You're good at this game. Listen, I'm propping you on this one. I'm with you. I believe I train it. My next book, The Map Out of Hell, is about grief training and how to grief train correctly through your coping mechanisms, through fear, doubt, excuses, and distractions, and then being able to grieve appropriately through all the pieces. I believe it's trainable and it has worked. And for you to say my autonomy is there and I will grieve, I will do this. I know how to go through it. I've done it before. I'll do it again, and I'll do it again. It is a training. It is not like I'm born knowing it. There's steps to it, and we can go through, not avoid, not distract, not deny. I go through all those feelings. That's a trainable skill.
Absolutely.
I'm going to ask you a question. I hate doing yes or no's, but it's a yes or no question.
Mm-hmm.
Do you believe, as a spirit warrior, that fear is beautiful? It's beatable?
Sure. Of course, yes.
It is beatable. And so for anybody who's like, I don't know if it's possible. I don't know if I'm so uncertain. I'm so scared.
Yeah, and that's understandable. We've all been there. I mean, and we've all had such loss or fear of loss. I mean, just if you tell me you don't have fear, and then I say, well, wait till your, second oldest kid has to go in for surgery, then tell me you don't have fear.
Mm-hmm.
You say you don't have fear, you're just fucking lying out your ass.
Right.
No, I like what you were saying there about grief and that it is trainable. And what was the question you just asked? Oh, can fear be overcome? That's what I wanted to address. For me, and I love what you say about going through it. Absolutely, 100% agree. And really, I believe that pain and fear are life's greatest gifts, literally life's greatest gifts, because they teach me about myself. Not just that they strengthen me as I recover. That's not really it. That they have the greatest gems of wisdom, the greatest cascading waterfalls of truth are in the dark forest. They're in the ugliest stuff. And if I can begin to, after I flush out the pain of fear, after I flush out the anxiety associated with fear, and those are really the same thing for my purposes, I keep it simple, but that I ask it, what is this fear indicating about me? What is this telling? Where the hell is this fear coming from? Oh, it's from that cluster of experiences from my past where blah, blah, blah. Oh, you've got a cluster of experiences that cause you to fear feeling now? Oh, great. Now I know where I need to go to heal next. Now I know the next thing I need to do to get out more crud out of inside of me. So fear and pain are always teaching us about ourselves and about life. And it's not just teaching me, oh, I'm tougher. Oh, I'm tougher. No, I mean, come on, get some fucking nuance in your life, for fuck's sake. So no, I love what you say there about pain. It's so true that it does have to be gone through. I mean, what's that old quote by Rumi that we all know, the cure for the pain is the pain, and not just insofar as it makes you tougher. I mean, it's just such a ridiculous thing, but in all that going into it and getting it out finally, then it's not in you anymore. Because until the pain is out of you, as I say, it's still in you.
I love that you've done this is a core belief of mine, what you just said. And it's an Epictetus quote that I made a little more PC. But like you said, fear and pain, they teach me about me. And one of the main quotes that I use is your circumstances do not define you. They reveal you to yourself.
Mm.
And so if you're in pain or you're grieving or you're afraid or whatever it is, it's showing you who you really are. If you're lying, if you're dismissive, if you're deflective, however you're handling situations, it's revealing you to you. And do you
Right.
have the awareness of yourself in these moments to call you truthfully what you really are?
Yeah, and that's where I go with my clients. I say every feeling that you feel is an opportunity. Every feeling is like, oh shit, I'm feeling pissed off right now because some cocksucker just cut me off in traffic. Boom. I now know that I got something I can journal about when I get home. Where is that coming from? What is this really about? Or I'm feeling sad because, my next door neighbor, this old Japanese couple, and she's feeling, and I love these guys, and she's having to go in for surgery, and I'm feeling a bit sad. And it's like, okay, where's this coming from? One more opportunity to purge more pain, to find more roots of my core beliefs about life, about self, my core fears. And the more we go into that stuff, just the lighter we become, the more at peace we are, rather than that motor always running inside that we're always forever fucking trying to compensate for or fucking squelch or what have you. So yeah, everything is just another fucking arrow pointing to somewhere in me where I can do more healing.
My dude, it has been such an honor, brother. I
Pleasure is
appreciate you
mine.
so much, man.
Pleasure is mine. Thank you so much for having me on your show.
Yeah, man, thank you for going in. I love that you took the breaks off and we're going. I love it, man. This is one of my favorite things to be able to do is be able to have no training wheels. We're going hard. And
I
I
enjoyed it.
appreciate and honor you for doing that.
Thank you for leading in, and you did great. Appreciate it all, man.
So what if people are like, I love this dude. This is my guy. Badass counseling is for me.
Mhm.
Where do they go? We will have all the links in the bios, but I want them to hear it too.
Sure.
Like, how do they get in touch with you so they can have what you're offering?
Sure. I'm not real original, so my business is Badass Counseling. So my website is badasscounseling.com. I'm Badass Counseling on TikTok, on Twitter or X, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and I've got about 800 plus free videos on those sites. I've got a free podcast, the Badass Counseling Show, Spotify, Audible, all those. I've got books, on my website. The one that became the bestseller was There's a Hole in My Love Cup. That one is on, as well as others. I've got another one coming out shortly called Badass Wisdom. And actually, the audio book will be up in the next week or two here. And yeah, and if you want counseling services, just go to the website. I'm egregiously expensive, mainly because I gave all my shit away for free for 20 years, lived on the street, worked with the homeless, ministered to the homeless for several years. I was a pastor, and so I've done it for free. But now most of my clients can afford that, so that I can still do a lot of pro bono work in my city for the drug addled, for homeless vets and shit like that. But what I tell people is fucking save your money. Save your money. Get my goddamn book. My book is 80% of my counseling method. I put it all out there, with the exception of a couple of things, plus some other stuff that has been developed since that book came out 5 years ago, 6 years ago. But it's 80% of my counseling method, and all the exercises are in there. And I believe, especially with the mental health crisis we have in so much of Western civilization right now, there aren't enough mental health workers for everyone. And the vets know it. Folks up in Canada, I have a lot of Canadian clients. They just can't get help. And Canada's a great country. I don't mean to disparage Canada. It's just the need is so great. And so I just continually try to create as many tools as possible. The free 800 videos, the free podcast, the book. I have do-it-yourself videos on the website. All of these things so that you can do it yourself if you're motivated. And it's just like anything in life. If you're motivated to make money and you got that focus, or motivated to excel at playing your instrument or in sports, and you can have the focus and the discipline, you can do it in your own self-healing as long as you're taught how and have the right tools. And so that's what I try to give for folks.
And I can relate with you. Like I've told my guys too, like I can, with full transformation, I can really only probably take like 500 people a year.
Yeah.
Like that's me capped out. How many people need help? Millions to billions.
Right.
I can't even put a drop in the bucket. I have to refer out. I have to have more resources. I have to have more people go to you or to other people who are doing these fights because I can only handle so many. And like this is the people who do the deep work. We already know that we're limited. I can only handle so many to do the deep, deep work. It takes time. And
Amen.
so it's an honor to have another brother in the fight, man.
Pleasure was completely mine. Thanks for having me on your show, Rick. I really appreciate it. Love your show. Love what you're doing, man.
Thanks, brother. Appreciate you.